We're going to finally be starting our first clay project today, and we are going to be creating a sculpture of a fish. I know that many of you who had art last year or the year before noticed how these turned out and are pretty excited to get started on yours. Here are a couple examples that I've made over the years. By all means, you should think about how you want to create yours to be individual and special and personal to you. There is no expectation that yours should look anything like mine. I'm just showing you these as just give you an idea in case you haven't had art to see what these look like. There's also a lot of really great examples on the school website under the 8th grade art tab. So if you want to see what other students have done in the past, you could visit there. But the first thing we're going to do is all going to be the same today because we have to give the fish a body. And the way that we're going to do the body is with 2 pieces of clay that you're going to roll into spheres. This clay is a little bit wet today, so the more you kind of roll it in your hands today, probably the better that's going to be. In any case, you want to end up with a really nice, smooth, even sphere, and you're going to need 2 of them. What you're going to be doing to create the body is making a hollow egg shape, and that's going to be the basis for everything we do the rest of the week with the clay project. So I've got 2 of them that are nicely formed into spheres, and what I'm going to do is create a pinch pot with each of these. Now, if you've had clay experience before, you probably learned how to make a pinch pot. It's really fun. It's easy. You use the shape of your hand to kind of create the cup part. So it's just like a little bitty cup or a little bowl. So I'm going to nestle that in my hand, and then I'm going to use my thumb and push down. And I'm trying to push down until I can almost feel that my thumb might be coming through the bottom, but I don't want it to come through the bottom. But I can kind of sense that pressure in there. And I'm going to take my thumb and push against my hand to kind of make a little opening in the sphere. So I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, it's almost big enough that I could fit 2 thumbs in there and start to squeeze a little bit, but maybe not quite. What you're going to do is continue to hold it in your palm, and then you can use your finger to kind of press next to your palm while you're turning the ball of clay. And what's happening is that the opening keeps getting wider and wider. So even though this is called a pinch pot, you really don't pinch anything. You just kind of press. And if you are careful and you use the palm of your hand as kind of a mold for that, you're going to get something that really closely resembles a little bitty bowl. And what you can do then is kind of take your hands and your fingers and just kind of feel around and make sure that it's uniformly thick all the way around the edges, and then also here in the bottom. So our goal is to have a little bowl. You don't want this edge to be very thin. You want this edge to be kind of thick. So you can see I didn't pinch. You don't want to ever pinch on the edge or the lip of the bowl. So I've got one pretty well formed. And then what I'm going to do is just quickly do the other one so that I can show you how they're joined together. So I started by poking my thumb in and making it go almost to my palm. And then I'm going to kind of press my finger and my thumbs together and kind of spin it around. I can use more than one finger pushing against the palm to create the sides of the other one. And then I'm going to have 2 of them that are ready to join. Okay, so now I've got my 2 pinch pots finished. And what I'm going to do next is join them together so that I have this kind of big egg shape thing. Now, this is a little trickier than you might think, because in order to get these two things to line up right, they have to be about the same size. Now, I've done this many, many times, and so mine turned out right the first time I tried it. Chances are that yours won't. So if they don't, I don't want you to be upset or think that you're a failure or anything like that, or get frustrated. All you have to do is just kind of ball your clay back up together and make a new pinch pot. It's easy as that. But let's say that you do have two that are ready to be joined. What you're going to do is just line them up and press them together gently. Once they are sealed, you will have created a little vacuum, and the air that's trapped inside there will keep it together and make it strong. So after I get them together, I'm taking my finger and I'm just raking it across the seam to disguise the seam and blend that in. This also makes the join nice and strong right there. Go all the way around. Sometimes you'll hear ceramic artists, or potters as they are sometimes called, saying that they are knitting the two pieces together. So sometimes that's called knitting together, even though there's nothing to do with yarn or knitting needles or anything like that. So it's nice and smooth. And after it's all sealed, you can kind of hear that it even sounds hollow. It sounds like a pumpkin if you kind of tapped on the outside of a pumpkin. But that's going to be the body of your fish, and that's a nice big one. And you're ready to start. So that's the step. These two steps are what we want to get done today. Today we get to add the fins and the tail to your fish. There's really no rules about how those need to look. It's really up to you. But there is a rule and a really important step about how to make sure that you attach them correctly. So I want to show you that step today, and then you're going to have the rest of the period to add the tails and the fins, however you want those to be. I'm going to absolutely, of course, require that it has some kind of tail fin, and that it has, you know, the top fin and the side fins as fish would, unless you've got something really unique in mind, and then, you know, we can talk about that. But anytime we're attaching two pieces of clay, as we will be doing when we attach the fins to the body of the fish, there are certain rules that you need to follow. So if you've had art before, you're probably familiar with those rules. If you haven't had art, or it's been a long time, then we need to go over them again. So when you get to your table today, you're going to notice that there are a lot more tools available and things that you're going to be using. I have made for you a little card that shows exactly how your table should be set up. This is going to help us for cleanup, and it's also going to help you learn the names and purposes of a variety of tools. So mainly, you're going to have a set of tools that looks like this. At the end of the day, it needs to look like this before you leave, and I'll be coming around to check. But what you have available, most importantly, you've got some modeling tools. So you're going to have a round modeling tool that's really handy because it's got a sharp point, and it'll help you smooth things out and make, you know, if you ever wanted to make a hole or something like that. There are going to be a variety of modeling tools, and these are used mainly for sculpting. You want to focus on the end of the tool. This would be really good for those of you that had kind of a bumpy body yesterday. You can use these kind of like you would if you were icing a cake, and you could kind of go across the surface of your clay to smooth that out. The other end of this has kind of a scraper on the end. This could be used for getting clay pieces ready to attach, and we'll talk about that in a second. You could use this as a scoring tool, but this silver tool is the official scoring tool. So it looks like a really heavy bristle brush on the end. And that's what we're going to use to create the place on the clay where you will join two pieces of clay together. The other important tool that you're going to have at your table is this one, and it's called a fettling knife. The fettling knife is just like what you would think. It's a knife for cutting pieces of clay. So you're going to have these set up at your table, and then before you leave, you're going to count and match and make sure that your table setup matches the picture on the little card that's going to be at the table. And you'll work together with your friends to make sure that happens. So let's start learning how to attach a fin. When you're attaching a fin, you're going to need just a small piece of clay and a lot of imagination. To start, I'm just going to show you the most basic way to do it. So what I'm doing is rolling the clay around in my hands just to get it smooth on the outside. And then to make it, it's just as simple as a hand over hand, pressing down to make a little slab of clay. So any clay that's pressed flat is called a slab. For the fins, you do not want this to be really thin. You want it to be about like a cookie. So this one looks about like a cookie to me. Nom, nom, nom. And then you can kind of hold it up and kind of judge for size. So as I hold this up and I think, well, that looks like it could be a pretty decent top fin. And it's just as simple as cutting the top of it off. And so I've got a little section of that circular slab. And what I can do is just pop it right on there. And I've got a fin on the top. I want to show you how to join the two pieces. So whenever you're joining two different kinds of, not kinds of clay, whenever you're joining two pieces of clay that have different amounts of moisture in them. So the clay I'm giving you to make the fins today is very wet. The clay from yesterday is a little bit drier. So these two pieces, if I just stuck it on there like that, it would appear to stay. Right? It's not like really coming off. However, when it dries, it won't stay. It'll just pop right off. So the simple step that you have to follow is called score and slip. So scoring means you take this little tool and you kind of drag it over the surface where you want your fin to be. And what you're doing is roughing up the clay. You're making little bitty marks in there. And then you're going to use what's called slip. And slip is kind of like clay glue, but actually it's nothing more than clay mixed with a lot of water. And you're going to put the slip down in there. And you always want to score and slip onto the piece of clay that's dry. So this clay, while not totally dry, is drier than the new clay from today. So I did the scoring and the slipping on the dry piece, and then I'm just going to set that right on there for my first fin. And here comes the fun part. So what you're going to do after you score and slip, you want to kind of blend your edges together so it doesn't look like you scored and slipped there. You want that to be nice and smooth and joined together. So I'm just kind of using my finger to smooth out that seam. And then to make it fun, you can adjust whatever you're doing on this fin. So maybe I want to take my finger and kind of press in a little bit to give it a little bit more life. And you can do that however you want. And just kind of bend this around. We know that fish are, since they're living creatures, you're not going to have something that looks like really just straight and static. So if you want it to be lifelike, you kind of want to bend this around a little bit. And as you do that, you can also use your modeling tools to create a variety of textures. If you want to have some little lines to show that this is a fin. Fishies usually have little lines like that. Again, this is where your imagination is really going to come in. You want this to be something personal and creative and fun for yourself. So I want you to think about how you can do that. But the modeling tools are here to create textures, to create a sense of movement and life into this little sculpture. The other thing you can do with, of course, the modeling tool as well, is if you grab the wooden ones, they have a nice surface at the end, and you can use that for blending. So that works really well. I want to also show you an example of how you could put on a side fin. Again, you're going to do this the same way. I would do this together, so you got two that you're doing at the same time because you want them to match. It's really frustrating to make one and then go back and think like, oh crud, I need another one. So I'm going to start with 2 pieces of clay that are about the same size, so that both of my side fins will be the same size. And then an easy way to make these is to just take the little pieces of clay and kind of smush them down to make tiny little cookies, like vanilla wafer size cookies, I guess you could say. And then if you pinch it a little bit on one side, ta-da, it kind of looks like a fin. So in the context of the fish, you could put that on there, okay? And again, it's not going to stay unless I do what? Okay, I can't hear you, but if I could, you would be saying score and slip, or else it'll fall off, and your fishy will not have a fin. Very upset with you. So there's our fin. And then to make it look lifelike, I would blend it in this way. Okay. And I would probably make some texture on this one and kind of change the edge of it to make it look nice. All right, so in the interest of saving time, the last join that I want to show you is for the tail. Now, most of you are going to want a tail that is a lot bigger than the top or the side fins. So kind of take that into account when you grab a piece of clay. And you're going to do the same thing. Press that into a slab. Think about the shape that you want this to be. And the shape that I recommend, if you're not quite sure how you want this to be, the shape that I recommend is a trapezoid. So it's going to be like that-ish. Okay, so you can kind of see how that could be a tail fin. And then when you're putting it on, decide which side is the back, and you're going to stick it on. But okay, here's where we have a little bit of a different issue, because see how that's stuck on there? And this piece is pretty heavy, and this little join is rather small. So this requires a different approach. So I want to show this to you really quick, and then you'll get started. So what I'm going to do is score right here, slip real well, stick on the tail, and I don't really expect that that's going to stay because this is too heavy compared to where it's joined in. So we have to do something a little bit different. And what that is called a reinforcing coil. So I'm just taking a small little piece of clay and I'm rolling it into a tube or a snake. And what I'm going to do is put a little bit more slip right next to where the tail meets the body. And then I'm going to lay that reinforcing coil on there. Just pinch off the end of it and then blend it in. When I do that on each side, I'm going to have a much, much stronger join between the two pieces. And there he is. And so you can even see, just looking at it in the video, that what I've done is create a thicker place right here. So it's angled more into the body than it would have been if I just plopped that piece of clay on the end. Okay, so I think that should get you started today. In the interest of getting these done before fall break, I'm going to require that you get the tail and the fins on today before you leave. Have fun.